Hello my snacky wackies, welcome back you wackies, my name's Jackawackies.
Today's adventures are dabbling into the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
Specifically the most cringiest and upsetting of moments of people attempting to explore the world of D&D. So just like last time, if you have no idea how to play this game or how it all works, don't you worry, I'll explain any jargon as we go along. 99% of it is issues of the people themselves, not at all the game they're playing. Such as this lovely tale of a person having a huge tantrum in front of their entire family. So I was DMing for a friend and his wife and 2 kids. He was high pressure in terms of wanting weekly games. I pushed back with telling him I didn't have time for proper prep at once-a-week intervals, but he insisted I could just wing it, and he'd be fine. I knew he had a bit of a temper problem and could get rules lawyer-ish, but he assured me he'd take the faster, looser style, well, just as long as I could DM weekly for him and family. The game Jonasing really was him. So house husband wants their friend here to play the dungeon master role, take him and the family on a fun fantasy adventure. He assures the OP that he's not going to be such a stickler for following the rules exactly and stuff. So I go to his home and give it my best. This derailed on first try when, mid-adventure, I didn't give him the weapon he wanted. Look, it was appropriate for his playable character's level, too fancy for this small remote village to have. He didn't yell and scream, but like a baby. A 60-year-old baby. He slams his hand down on the table and storms upstairs. The family, wife and 2 older teen kids, don't make eye contact with me, somehow being simultaneously sheepish and terrified, as if Geezer Baby is going to come back down with a handgun. They drop everything and head upstairs. I'm alone at the table in his house. I wait. The lights dim. So I pack up my stuff. It's not until he hears me walk to the front door that he comes down, goes the long way around the first floor to avoid me on his way to the game table to get his phone. No eye contact, no response to my dry "good night," just walks back upstairs. So I let myself out. But the very next day, he texts me as if nothing happened.
When to the next game?
I blocked him after that. The details of the dispute are petty and irrelevant. Don't do that to an invited guest in your home. You can ask them to leave, and there's room for later reconciliation after that. Ghost them face to face in your own home? That's a level of dysfunction I don't care to work past. Now for people unacquainted, for people not familiar with D&D, quite a lot of the rules are more so guidelines. End of the day, you can homebrew, as they call it, any rules and storyline and logic that you want. So you can argue that the OP has been a bit of a stickler here by refusing to let the person he's, creating a story and fun adventure for, to just not let them have what they want to have. But if this person has literally asked and begged for this person to run this story and fantasy adventure for him, clearly this is someone who's good at what they do and is merely trying to apply their skill set for this family's enjoyment. So you could also argue, in sense of world building here, it makes sense that you're not going to be able to get what is the equivalent of an iPhone, all brand new and perfect working condition, down at the bottom of the ocean. It's just, you got to apply some logic still. And how do we feel about a 60-year-old man having a literal physical tantrum in front of the family to the point where they act like they shut down themselves? It makes many wonder if there is something going on in this family dynamic that makes it far worse than just a petty adult. Seriously, some people are expecting the worst from this man in the future. And honestly, I don't blame them. This wasn't poker. There was nothing on the line here. And this man acted as if, I don't know what's the equivalent of an adult resorting to storming away in a tantrum? Who does that at 60 years old? Away from the sulky old man now, over to the squeaky, creepy woman. This happened a couple of years ago, like late 2020. A friend of mine that I've known for a while had invited me to join his group of friends for their D&D group. I had been a forever DM since as long as I can remember, and had recently experienced my annual burnout, so I was excited at the prospect of joining a group as a player. I should mention that while my friend invited me for one campaign they had going, his friends took a liking to me enough to invite me to a secondary campaign that another player was DMing. This is the group where the problems arose. Most of the players were the same in both campaigns, but there was one other player in the secondary group that wasn't in the other. We'll call her B. Also, I think a lot of these people met from being in artistic circles, so many of them were digital artists, animators, etc., including B. When I was invited to this group, I had already had a small arsenal full of characters ready to play, as most forever DMs tend to have, and it was as simple as choosing the best character to fit the setting, quickly adapting them, and rolling for stats, basically establishing the character's strengths and weaknesses, both in combat and general interaction in the world. Now, the DM and I had a good time creating my character, and he genuinely is my favorite character to have ever been played. To describe him, he was a Saxton Hale / Indiana Jones inspired safari man in his 50s, always in a big hat, very athletic, and was a muscle goofball who was an overconfident survivalist. His name was Daniel Danger. Of course, everyone called him Danger. Since I have an inability to make a character not a little edgy, I ended up writing him with awful trust issues and having the meta motto of always running from his problems. So with that context out of the way, let me get into what happened. Now, on the first session after I joined, we had a blast. I was on fire, getting the whole party involved in my antics and socially terrorizing some NPCs with my crazy new character. Danger was a hit. I wasn't super close with anybody, so I didn't really pay any special attention to any one person. But since it related to Danger's backstory, I had planned a little grounding flashback moment to happen when Danger first sees B's character. I wrote up the idea that Danger had lost a little sister and B's character reminded him of her. For more context, B is playing a small fighter girl with a 16 level strength that you wouldn't notice by looking at her. She's playing a minor, but I don't think B themselves was. Now, before the next session, B came up to me and announced that they had made art of my character. I was flattered and asked to see it. That's when B showed me the art they had made of both me and their characters together, sharing a tender moment where Danger had been injured. B's character was tending to his wounds as they look intimately toward each other. Note, our characters haven't even met each other. Not properly. We haven't talked as players all that much, and Danger was not in a situation like this in the slightest. Something about this left a weird taste in my mouth, and I asked B to let me know if they plan on drawing my character so I can have a little bit of agency with what they do with them in the future. Well, B seemed a little hurt, but understood. So a few sessions later, I arrived a little early and a few people were talking idly. I hadn't been in the call for nearly a minute before I hear B talking about Danger, saying something to the effect of,
"Yeah, I think he accidentally made my type."
I didn't say anything, but I noted it as just a stay away from her kind of red flag. So yeah, essentially it's starting to sound a bit like that Opie's intention of showing his character's vulnerability has made this woman interpret that as,
he wants our characters to frick, yeah.
and is possibly trying to project that onto both of them as well. But here's something else to consider. Many of us, in an attempt to connect with others or display some camaraderie or relation to each other, especially an artist, at least in my experience, will tend to draw something related to the person you're trying to build a rapport with as like a symbol of friendship or connection. I honestly theorize B here drew this stuff purely to just connect with this new player to the group. A way of like, I accept you or I welcome you to our social dynamic. Here is proof of that. On the other hand, I could be extremely naive here, as I am consistently in any of these sort of situations if I was personally in them. So I'm open to your interpretation as we read along. So at the start of this session, a few players, including Danger, went hunting. Danger managed to sustain a small injury during this. B's player could smell blood in the water. She immediately started fumbling her way over to my character, brandishing a medkit and attempting to make her fan artwork a reality. As I mentioned before, I wrote Danger with severe trust and intimacy issues, so this was not going to happen. I described Danger keeping his distance, not allowing her to touch him, and even used a second wind ability to show there's no issue, basically slightly healing himself. This didn't deter her, and she was determined to get what she came for. The DM ended up calling for a contested strength check that I highly opposed since it was violating my character's autonomy, but I won anyway. QB pouting in real life and shutting down from 100 to 0. The session continues for a few minutes, and I felt a little bad for her. I decided to give her an actually authentic interaction, Using the game we had caught and utilizing my character's simultaneous stupidity and superhuman repression ability, I had Danger approach B's character with a wishbone to pull. It was small. We rolled for it, and she got the larger piece and got to make a wish, Danger explained. B, in real life, started crying. She teared up in the call and left. Another side note. Many people go on Discord or some form of video chat to play D&D these days. Just a lot easier than having to meet up in one local spot every night. Just imagine a typical workplace Zoom meeting, but actually fun. I was absolutely dumbstruck as she caused this minor scene. Some of the players and the DM decided to call the session early to go and console her, while it was left with just me and my friend. But he assured me I didn't do anything wrong. But after this, B was pretty hostile towards me, and when we would interact, she would adhere to what I had asked her to do regarding drawing my character, but whenever she wanted to draw my character as part of a group drawing, she would add some weird stink onto her having to ask my permission. Although, she never really ventured beyond the bounds of what was acceptable after that. I ended up leaving the campaign after the party ditched Danger for the second time in a major way, and it was a very unceremonious end to my favorite character to have played to date. As to what happens to B though eventually, well, she recently blew up my friend's D&D server with a big entitled issue about how everyone in the group refused to cut off their friends simply because she didn't like them anymore and left. So now I feel like I can post this, as I know I'll never have to deal with her again. See, that's the slight problem with some of this roleplay fantasy when you do it with other people. There are some who don't seem to realize or acknowledge the fact that the characters you're role-playing with also other people with their own autonomy with their characters. Just because you like how someone's role-played someone doesn't entitle you to enforce your fantasy onto them just because, oh, you liked how they looked and behaved? Cool, go diddle yourself to that in your own time. Now, if you're wondering why she had a tantrum over the wishbone, you're not alone. Some wonder it might have felt like he was leading her on after she already assumed way too much because she probably never had a real relationship. And the OP even comes in to clarify about this. He definitely couldn't have been leading her on in real life because he was 100% transparent that they were in a 5-year relationship with their significant other. His partners even talked to B a couple of times before sessions, and further cementing the idea that yes, as we're saying, it's likely she's been upset at this because OP destroyed her expectation of having absolute control over her fantasies of your character. Apparently, she was definitely the mom friend type, but incredibly insecure in that fact. In a way, I think I forced her into an interaction she didn't want, where she wasn't in control, the nurturer or the supporter, but in fact, a platonic equal. And how dare you give her that kind of respect? You either let her absolutely step all over your balls, or you completely demoralize her. There's no in between.
I mean, what's the point of this being a fantasy if I can't be your mommy? You're ruining everything for everyone, LP.
And on the note of the mom friend fixation, when you combine that with a legal adult playing a minor character, which has always, without fail, been the reddest of red flags in my experience, that takes on an even creepier vibe on her part. Because yeah, let's remind ourselves, OP was playing a character in his 50s, and she was a minor, and she was trying to make them become a couple. No. So much no. Oh, but don't worry. The child wasn't a child. Her character was supposed to be 16 years old. Oh, so I guess it's fine then, guys. It's legal. Is that whole excuse? When that's someone's only defense, you know you're in like, oh, you're in thin ice. Like, let's be real. If you're saying it's okay because it's legal, you're basically admitting that that's the only thing stopping you from trying to date someone who's 15 or 14 or 13 years old. Either way, yeah. All the direct crushing on was out of game, but that didn't stop her from trying to act out her fantasies using her character. I'm sure she would have chalked up in the character motivations to a weird sense of nurturing their friends or some bull crud. But I still bring up my point, regardless of some of these other bits of extra information. Do you think this was also just them trying to connect with the OP as well? Maybe she wanted to create a character arc of her own where this person does establish some problematic daddy issues towards OP's character, but ultimately learns that it's unhealthy. And through the help of OP's Daniel Danger character, she learns to establish more healthier relationship boundaries with older people. I don't know. I feel like there might have been some things here that have been possibly blown out of proportion. Let me know what you think, though. I might be doing too many what if moments here. Now, this next story's title is an absolute spoiler, so I'm just going to go straight into it, and trust me, you'll... you're gonna want to stick around for this one. Just as a teaser, I'll blur half the title. Drunk player does something after dying in-game. This story is somewhat bizarre because it really felt like it came out of nowhere. There were about 4 of us guys, and we are all friends to some degree. Some of us are closer than others, but we all enjoyed each other's company, went out for drinks, and played games together. Now, speaking of games, a couple of months ago, we all decided to have a D&D game at the DM's house since it was the largest childless house in our group. His wife ended up playing too, for like 99% of the campaign. Everything was good. Our characters were fun, the world was immersive, and the villains were tough. This was until about a month ago. We were having a Saturday get-together where we would basically just unwind with some beer, D&D, and movies. The soon-to-be that guy was playing a wizard as the party entered an ancient cave or dungeon and reached a magic item at the end of a room. There was a chasm that was separating us from the item. Before we could get it, the cave or dungeon started collapsing due to an evil spell that one of us had accidentally triggered. All of us decided that it wasn't worth risking a team party kill over a suspicious magic item. My detect good and evil spell heavily implied that this magic item was evil. Now, all of us, except the soon-to-be that guy, decided to waste his last spell slot teleporting across the chasm to get the magic item with 4 HP because he was convinced the DM was tricking us. Well, it turned out I was right, and it was a mimic, which is a giant magical chest with teeth. A talking mimic that was working for the big boss at the end of the game. The mimic got a surprise round and missed, so the wizard decided to flee. Now, fortunately for him, the mimic failed the opportunity attack as well. So, as the rubble was falling, wizard attempts to jump and grab a stalactite, so the DM had him roll an athletics check, and he rolled a nat 1. So the stalactite falls into the abyss along with the wizard, which obviously kills him. Wizard then says, "No death saves?" in a confrontational tone, so the DM says, "Bro, you rolled a nat 1 and fell into an abyss that leads to the Underdark at 4 HP. You can't death save your way out of that." Now the wizard then claims that the DM just made up the whole Underdark chasm in order to kill him and accuse the DM of having a DM versus the party mentality. Now, just to give that some context as to how stupid that argument is, it's like arguing that Canada doesn't exist because you crossed the border and got arrested.
Oh, you just put that country there to get me arrested!
Anyway, he then drunkenly tried to calculate the max height that a chasm like that could be, and that he couldn't have taken enough damage to negate death saves. His math was painfully bad, and his premise was flawed as, again, he fell into the fricking Underdark, not a regular cave floor. And then he tried to argue that if he has to die, that he should be able to come back as a more powerful white wizard like Gandalf, because the wizard class is based on the Lord of the Rings wizards. As his arguments kept failing and he was getting angrier and more argumentative, the DM basically just laid down the law and basically said, "Look, your character is dead, end of discussion, so roll up a new one." He then just sat down and said, "Fine." As he sat there pouting and slowly coming up with a new character as the rest of us dodged collapsing rubble and rocks and barely escaping the caves with our lives. The former wizard didn't get a chance to finish the character before the session ended. Now, as we talked a bit after the session about how wild it was and anticipated next week, he just kept sitting there, silently pouting before he got up to go use the bathroom. We kept talking and drinking our beers as the subject veered off to anime and other nerdy topics. We chilled for about 20 minutes before we see him coming out of the bathroom. He opens the door to leave the house. The DM asks if he's okay, and he just abruptly says,
"I'm fine. My Uber's here. Bye."
and slammed the door. We just figured he needs some time to cool off. DM said he would talk to him tomorrow. We continued on just having fun for the next 10 minutes before we started getting ready for the movies. So as the DM and his wife are preparing the popcorn, we, the players, started noticing a really bad smell coming from the bathroom. We ignored it till it got to the point where the DM's wife noticed it and complained, so the DM checked it out and started yelling and cursing. We all get up and check it out, and it is honestly the most disgusting thing I have ever experienced in my life. Poop was smeared all over the floor, the walls, and the mirror. There was a turd in the sink, and it looked like he wrote the words "frick you" in poop that it clearly had smeared on the wall. Although, to be fair, the writing was not very clear, obviously. We were all shocked, and the DM and his wife were mad. The DM called the former wizard to basically cuss him out and say that he is no longer welcome at his table or his house. He had tears in his eyes while making this call, as the rest of us basically just began grabbing cleaning supplies to help him clean up the bathroom. It was gross, but we got it cleaned in about half an hour. We all took showers afterwards, and by then we ended up still watching the movies in order to not let this be our memory of what was otherwise a great night. Plus, we were all still a bit buzzed and didn't want to drive. Honestly, A+ job to resolving that in just half an hour. I think I'd have to sit outside after sealing off the bathroom for like an hour or two to kind of cool off and get my head in the game of having to clean up someone else's feces. The next day, the former wizard called me to ask me to talk to the DM and get him to let him play again. But I refused and told him that he really hurt the DM. So he tried to make me out to be a terrible friend and whatnot, so I shut his manipulative bullshit down and said, "Fine then, I guess we have no reason to talk to each other if that's how you feel," and I hung up. None of us heard from him again. They speak for us all when they say,
God grant me the confidence of a man who smears his own poop on someone's walls and then still expects them to remain in their friend group.
Wow, this is amazing. My favorite post ever. Why didn't he just go home? Why didn't he just ask to speak to the DM tomorrow about his character maybe having a way back from death? Nope. Pooh. Now here's something to ponder. Someone actually thinks there is a way that this person could have made amends. In response to them reaching out to OP instead of the DM themselves, they suggested that they should have reached out to the DM directly, apologized, blamed it on the booze, but also make some major amends, such as you won't drink on game nights anymore, add some sort of financial incentive that the DM might stress over when it comes to running these campaigns or hosting all the time. At the very least, could have had some better results than trying to have other people intervene on his behalf. Do you think that would be enough for you though if you were in the DM's position here? A friend got so mad at you in a drunken state. Now let's be real, yes, they were all in a drunken state, but then again, drunk actions are sober thoughts. Point is, do you think there is some repentance in order here? Others think that, yeah, I mean, smearing poo on someone's private home is grounds for zero tolerance, but I'm open to your interpretations of the situation. In the meanwhile, I think we'll end today's video there. Thank you for watching if you're this far into the video. Hope you've had a good weekend since I last saw you. And until the next time, you be good, love your face, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.